I came home early from work. My fiancée was in our bed with him. When she saw me, she laughed and said, "Guess you know now." I wasn't supposed to be home that early. My foreman had cut the shift short because of a supply delay, and I figured it was a chance to surprise Marissa. We'd been engaged 6 months, living together for a little over a year, and although things between us had felt different lately, I chalked it up to the stress of planning a wedding. We both worked long hours, and I thought if I showed up with dinner and her favorite bottle of wine, maybe we'd have one of those rare quiet nights where things actually felt easy again. The apartment lights were on when I pulled into the lot, but I didn't see her car in its usual spot. That didn't make sense. She never left them on if she went out. My first thought was that maybe her mother had dropped by or her friend Janelle had come over. But then I noticed something else. A black pickup truck parked 2 buildings over. I didn't recognize it, but something about the way it was angled, half hidden behind the dumpster, made me pause. I grabbed the takeout bags, climbed the stairs, and unlocked the door. The living room looked normal, maybe a little messier than usual. Her shoes by the couch, a sweater thrown across the armrest, a half-empty glass of wine on the coffee table. I remember thinking she must have started without me, which almost made me smile. But then I heard it. A muffled laugh. A low voice. Coming from the bedroom. I froze in the hallway. It's strange what the brain does in moments like that. You don't want to believe it, so you invent other explanations. Maybe she left the TV on. Maybe someone was FaceTiming her. Maybe. But then another sound cut through, sharp and unmistakable. A moan. The takeout bag slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. I felt my stomach drop like I'd stepped off a cliff. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. Something colder than anger took over. I walked straight to the bedroom, opened the door, and stood there. And there she was. Marissa, my fiancée, on our bed, with another man. The blanket tangled around their bodies, her hair wild, her skin flushed. His hand was on her waist like he'd held her 1,000 times before. They both looked up at me, startled for maybe a second. Then something happened I'll never forget. She laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not guilty laughter. A sharp, mocking laugh, like the joke was on me. "Guess you know now," she said, almost smug. The man beside her, Trevor Holt, I realized, an old acquaintance I hadn't seen in years, didn't even bother to move. He leaned back against the headboard like he owned the place. His eyes flicked over me, then back to her, and the smirk that spread across his face made me want to put him through the wall. For a moment, the three of us just stayed there in silence. I didn't shout. My throat was tight, my chest heavy, but I held myself still. I saw Marissa waiting for me to explode. When I didn't, she shifted, almost uncomfortable. I finally said, "How long?" She shrugged, as if it was nothing. "A while." Trevor chuckled low in his throat, and I thought my hands might break from how tightly I was clenching them. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I just turned, walked out, and shut the bedroom door behind me. The wine glass on the table caught my eye. I picked it up and set it in the sink, almost mechanically, like I needed to do something normal to stop the madness in my head. The takeout sat spilled on the floor by the door. I stepped around it, grabbed my jacket, and walked outside. The air felt sharp against my face. My hands were shaking, but I lit a cigarette and leaned against the railing. Down below, I saw the black pickup truck again. So it was his. He hadn't even bothered to hide it properly. I don't know how long I stood out there. Long enough for the cigarette to burn down to the filter. Long enough to hear the creak of the bed frame through the wall, like they weren't even pretending to stop. My neighbors passed on the walkway and gave me curious glances, probably wondering why I looked like someone had shot my dog. Eventually, I went back inside. The apartment was quiet now. I thought maybe they'd left. But when I stepped into the hallway, I saw the bedroom door still closed, a sliver of light beneath it. Their voices low, murmuring. I sat on the couch. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't move. Just sat there in the half-dark, staring at the wall, until finally the door opened. Marissa came out first, her hair tied up, makeup smudged, wearing the robe I bought her last Christmas. She didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed, like I was the problem here. Trevor followed, fully dressed now, and he didn't even look at me when he walked to the door. She lingered. "Don't wait up," she said flatly, then set her engagement ring on the coffee table like it was an old receipt she didn't need anymore. I didn't reply. She grabbed my wallet from the counter and slipped out with him. The door shut behind them. Silence. I picked up the ring. For a second, I almost laughed too, because the diamond I'd worked 2 jobs to afford suddenly looked cheap in the glow of the lamp. I set it back down. My eyes drifted to the floor where the takeout still sat spilled. Grease staining the carpet. Cold noodles strewn across the plastic. That somehow felt worse than anything else, that the night I tried to bring home dinner had turned into this. I cleaned up slowly, one piece at a time. Put the ruined food in the trash. Wiped the table. Rinsed the glass she'd left behind. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. The apartment was still. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A text from her. Don't blow up my phone tonight. We'll talk later. I didn't answer. Instead, I went into the bedroom. The sheets smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. I stripped them off, bundled them into the laundry bag, and threw it out onto the balcony. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in there. I laid down on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The ring glinted faintly from where she'd left it. Somewhere between exhaustion and rage, I thought. She didn't just betray me. She mocked me. In my own home. In my own bed. And she thought she'd walked away with everything. The next morning, the apartment was still heavy with silence. I hadn't slept much on the couch, only drifted in and out, staring at the ceiling until the daylight crept through the blinds. My phone buzzed a few times on the counter, but I ignored it. I already knew who it was. When I finally checked, there were 2 messages from Marissa. We'll talk when I'm ready. Don't make this dramatic. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. She had destroyed our engagement, trashed our relationship, and laughed in my face. But to her it was something as ordinary as changing shoes. I went about my day in a daze, but the apartment felt poisoned. Every corner reminded me of her. The robe on the chair, the makeup on the bathroom counter, the photos on the fridge. She had left most of her things behind, like she expected she'd float back in when it suited her. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I bagged up her clothes, jewelry, hair products, everything, and stacked them by the door. But when I tried to toss out the framed pictures of us smiling at barbecues, birthdays, weddings, something stopped me. I left them face down on the table instead. That night, the phone rang again. Her number. Against my better judgment, I answered. She didn't sound guilty. She sounded irritated. Why are you acting like this? She asked. We're adults. Things change. You don't have to make it ugly. I stayed quiet for a long time before asking. Why him? She sighed. Because he makes me feel alive. And because I can. I nearly crushed the phone in my hand. She ended the call by saying, I'll pick up my things soon. Don't make a scene. But the scene had already started, just not in the way she expected. It didn't take long for word to spread. We lived in a mid-sized town where gossip traveled faster than fire. By the weekend, people were whispering. Neighbors looked at me differently in the hallway. At the diner, the waitress gave me that pitying look I hated. Worse, I couldn't avoid running into people who knew us both. At the grocery store, one of Marissa's co-workers cornered me by the frozen foods. I'm so sorry, she said in hushed tones. She's been different lately. We all saw it. But nobody thought she'd actually do it. I forced a polite nod and moved on. But each time it happened, it dug deeper. Everyone knew. Everyone. By Monday, I decided to go to her parents' house. Maybe they'd knock some sense into her. Maybe they'd at least tell me why she was doing this. Her mother answered the door, looking nervous when she saw me standing there. Daniel, she said softly. This isn't a good time. I just need to talk, I said. To both of you. Please. She let me in reluctantly. Her father sat in the living room, sipping coffee, eyes on the TV. When he noticed me, he gave a slight nod, but didn't get up. I explained everything in as steady a voice as I could manage. I told them how I'd come home early, what I'd seen, what she'd said. Her father barely reacted. Her mother pursed her lips, then finally spoke. Daniel, she deserves to be happy. If she feels that way with someone else, who are we to stop her? It hit me like a punch. She was engaged to me. I said, we were planning a wedding. Your daughter laughed in my face while she was in bed with another man. And you're telling me she deserves this? Her mother looked down. Her father muttered, maybe it's better you know now than after the vows. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. 2 nights later, I made the mistake of going to my usual bar. I needed a drink, needed to sit somewhere that wasn't filled with reminders of her. I should have known better. I walked in and froze. Marissa was there. With him. Trevor had his arms slung around her like he was claiming territory. She spotted me before I could turn away. And she smiled. Not a warm smile. A sharp, cruel one. I sat at the bar anyway, ordered a whiskey, tried to pretend I didn't care. But I could feel their presence behind me, her laugh cutting through the music. It was deliberate. She wanted me to hear. Eventually, I heard her voice clear as day. I only stayed with him until something better came along. The words stung worse than anything. My hands tightened around the glass. I turned. She was watching me now, eyes glinting. Trevor smirked beside her. I stood, walked over, and the bar went quieter. People knew what was happening. I looked straight at her. Tell them, I said, loud enough for the room. Tell them who paid your bills. Who drove you to work when your car broke down. Who worked overtime so you could shop every weekend. Tell them who actually gave a damn about you while you played pretend. Her face changed. The smug mask cracked, and for the first time, I saw something real, panic. Trevor shifted like he was about to say something, but I stared him down. You think you found something better? You'll see how long that lasts when the money runs dry. The bar stayed silent. Then whispers started. Marissa grabbed her purse and stormed out. Trevor followed, glaring at me, but he didn't say a word. I sat back at the bar, ordered another whiskey, and the bartender leaned close. "You all right, man?" I wasn't. Not even close. But for the first time, I felt like the truth had been ripped open, and she couldn't hide behind her laughter anymore. The fallout was swift. Mutual friends started choosing sides, and most of them didn't choose hers. Stories began circulating about how she'd flirted with Trevor at parties even when I was standing right there, about how she had badmouthed me behind my back for months. She tried to spin it. On social media, she posted photos of her and Trevor smiling, captioned with lines like "finally free" and "true love always finds a way." But the comments weren't what she expected. People weren't cheering. They were asking questions. Some even called her out directly. By the end of the week, she deleted half her posts. I thought maybe she'd keep her distance after that. But I was wrong. On Friday night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there she was. Not laughing now. Not smug. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes glassy, like she hadn't slept. "Can we talk?" she asked. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking her way. "Talk about what?" "You already said it all." She looked over her shoulder as if checking the hallway, then back at me. "Trevor's not who I thought. He's different when it's just us. He gets angry. He's not." I cut her off. "Not my problem." Her voice cracked, softer this time. "I just need someone who understands." I almost laughed at the irony. She had laughed at me when I caught her cheating, told me not to be dramatic, mocked me in public, and now she wanted sympathy. I shut the door without another word. But as I leaned against it, heart pounding, I realized something. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She wasn't just going to fade from my life quietly. She was unraveling, and she would drag me into it whether I liked it or not. That weekend, I saw her again, this time not by accident. I was at a friend's birthday gathering, trying to distract myself, when she walked in with Trevor. They hadn't been invited by the host. They just showed up. The room tensed immediately. People whispered. Some looked at me like they expected me to blow up. Instead, I stood, raised my glass, and said calmly, "To Trevor, the man who thinks sleeping with another man's fiancée is an accomplishment." The room went silent. Marissa's cheeks burned. Trevor's jaw clenched, but he stayed seated. I continued, "I hope you both enjoy each other. Because everyone here knows exactly how you started. And we all know how things that start like that usually end." The host quickly tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. Marissa grabbed Trevor's arm and stormed out again. That night, my phone buzzed with another message from her. This time it wasn't smug. "You'll regret embarrassing me like that." I stared at the screen, and for the first time since it all began, I felt a flicker of something dangerous. She wasn't just hurt. She was planning something, and I had no idea how far she would go. The warning signs came quickly. After that night at the party, Marissa's polished little world started slipping. At first, it was whispers, people muttering about how Trevor had a temper, about fights breaking out when he drank. Then came the stories of unpaid tabs, of him shouting at bartenders, of his truck getting repossessed in the middle of the night. I didn't need to go looking for these things. They reached me on their own. Mutual friends called or texted, some out of pity, some out of schadenfreude. Everyone loves a spectacle, and Marissa had turned herself into one. But then the chaos stopped being rumors and came knocking on my own door. It was nearly midnight on a Thursday when I heard it. Hard, desperate pounding. I opened the door, and there she was, Marissa. Makeup smeared, hair wild, a bruise shadowing her cheekbone. She smelled of vodka and smoke. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "He's not who I thought." For a moment, I just stared at her. The same woman who had laughed in my face, who had strutted into a bar with another man and mocked me, now stood shaking in the hallway like a stray. She stepped closer. "Just let me in. I need a place to think. Just for tonight." I didn't move. Every instinct told me to slam the door. But there was something in her eyes, fear, genuine fear, that stopped me. Against my better judgment, I opened the door wider. She collapsed onto the couch, hugging her knees, staring at the floor. Silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. "Trevor's not who he pretends to be. He gets jealous, angry. He's rough when he drinks. I thought I was escaping something with you. But..." Her voice trailed off. I sat across from her, arms folded. "And now you want me to what?" "Save you." Her head snapped up. "I'm not asking for that. Daniel, I don't know where else to go. He's dangerous. I don't even know why I'm telling you this." I could have told her why. Because despite everything, she still thought of me as the steady one, the fallback, the man who wouldn't let her drown no matter how many times she spat in his face. But I didn't say it. I let her sit there, trembling, until she finally drifted into uneasy sleep on the couch. When I woke in the morning, she was gone. No note. Just gone. 2 days later, I saw her again. Not at my door this time, but at the grocery store. She looked composed again, hair neat, clothes pressed, the bruise covered with makeup. And Trevor was with her. The sight of him made my stomach tighten. He caught me staring, and his grin widened, sharp and mocking. He slung his arm around Marissa's shoulders like she was a trophy. She avoided my eyes. As I walked past them, he called out, "Hey, Reed. Nice couch you got there. Comfortable." I froze mid-step. Marissa flinched. He laughed. I didn't answer. I kept walking, but the heat in my chest burned long after I left the store. The rehearsal explosion came the following week. It was late afternoon at my workplace, a warehouse on the edge of town. I was loading supplies with 2 coworkers when I heard shouting in the distance. At first I thought it was just a customer arguing, but then I recognized the voice. Trevor. He stormed across the lot, face red, fists clenched. Marissa trailed behind him, trying to pull him back, but he shook her off. "Reed," he bellowed. "We need to talk." My coworker stepped aside, unsure what to do. I dropped the box I was carrying and faced him. "About what?" He closed the distance fast. "About you filling her head with lies. About you thinking you can just sit there like some saint while she crawls back to you behind my back." Marissa's face drained of color. "Trevor, stop." He shoved her aside, eyes locked on me. "She's mine now. You hear me? Mine. And if I catch you so much as looking at her, I'll..." He lunged. It happened fast. His fist swung wide, grazing my jaw. Instinct took over. I shoved him back, but he came again, more reckless this time. The fight turned ugly, boxes crashing, coworkers shouting, Marissa screaming for him to stop. I remember the moment I grabbed his shirt, yanked him forward, and drove him against the steel frame of a shelf. He hit hard, slumping for a second. But then he roared and came at me again. The final blow wasn't planned. He slipped, stumbled, and I pushed him off. His head cracked against the concrete floor with a sickening thud. Silence. My coworkers rushed forward. Marissa fell to her knees beside him, shaking him, screaming his name. Blood trickled from his temple. Someone called an ambulance. I stood frozen, chest heaving, adrenaline surging through me. Every eye in the warehouse was on me. When the paramedics arrived, they strapped him to a stretcher, still unconscious. Marissa glared at me with raw fury. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. And just like that, they were gone. The police came next. 2 officers asked questions, took statements. My coworkers vouched for me, said Trevor threw the first punch, that he was out of control, that I only defended myself. The officers nodded, scribbled notes, and told me not to leave town until they sorted it out. For the next 2 days, I lived in a haze, waiting, wondering if I'd be arrested, wondering if Trevor would wake up and twist the story against me. Marissa didn't call, but she didn't need to. I could feel her anger like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Finally, the call came. The police cleared me. Witnesses backed me up, and Trevor's record, bar fights, DUIs, public disturbances, spoke for itself. I was free, but that wasn't the end. Not even close. 2 nights later, I woke to another knock at my door. Slow, deliberate. I opened it, and there she was again. Marissa. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed red. "He's in the hospital," she said quietly. "They don't know if he'll recover fully. He keeps asking about you." I said nothing. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This is your fault. You wanted this. You couldn't just let us be. You had to keep pushing, keep humiliating me, keep." I cut her off. "You brought him into our bed. You laughed in my face. You paraded him around like a prize. And now you're standing here blaming me." Tears welled in her eyes, but her jaw tightened. "You'll regret it. I swear you will." And then she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hall. For the first time since it all began, I realized something chilling. She wasn't just reckless. She wasn't just selfish. She was dangerous. Trevor might have been the one bleeding in the hospital, but Marissa, she was the one pulling strings, twisting stories, spreading poison. And she wasn't done with me yet. I shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my pulse pounding in my ears. The war hadn't ended in that warehouse. It had just entered a new phase. And I had no idea how far she was willing to go. The days after the fight were strangely quiet. People in town looked at me differently now, some with sympathy, others with a wary kind of respect, like they hadn't expected me to stand my ground the way I had. For the first time, I wasn't the one being whispered about in pity. It was her. Marissa's world unraveled quickly after Trevor's hospitalization. She had built her whole image around the idea that she had traded up, that she had found someone stronger, more exciting, more capable than me. But now her upgrade was laid out in a hospital bed, unable to work, living off painkillers and excuses. Bills started piling up. I knew because word always found its way back to me. The apartment they had rented together was too much for her on her own, and she bounced between friends' couches when Trevor's medical costs swallowed what little they had. The glamorous photos she had once posted online disappeared. Her page went silent except for vague, bitter lines about fake people and betrayals. But the truth was, she was out of options. One evening, nearly 3 weeks after the warehouse fight, I came home to find her sitting on the steps outside my building. She looked smaller somehow, as if the air had gone out of her. No makeup, no bravado, just hollow eyes and trembling hands. I considered walking past her, but something stopped me. Maybe curiosity, maybe the part of me that still wanted to hear her admit the truth. She stood when she saw me. "Daniel," she said softly, "I need to talk." I unlocked the door and held it open, but I didn't invite her in. If she wanted to talk, she could do it right there. She hesitated, then blurted, "I made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. She rushed on, words spilling like she'd rehearsed them. "Trevor isn't who I thought. He doesn't take care of me. He doesn't even care about me. I thought I was choosing freedom, excitement. But it's not that. It's just chaos. And I can't do it anymore." I leaned against the doorframe. "And now you come back here? After everything?" Her voice cracked. "Because you're the only one who ever really loved me." I almost laughed. The memory of her smirk in my bedroom, her voice saying, "Guess you know now," burned fresh in my mind. "Loved you," I corrected. She flinched. "We can fix it. Please. I'll change. I'll do better. I just need another chance." For a long moment, I studied her. This was the same woman who had mocked me in public, who had taken my money, who had dragged another man into our bed and laughed. Now she stood there begging like a stranger who had lost everything. I shook my head slowly. "You don't get another chance." Her eyes widened, as if she hadn't even considered that answer. "Daniel." I cut her off. "You chose him. You mocked me. You humiliated me. And now you think you can crawl back because it fell apart? No. You made your choice. Live with it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached out, but I stepped back. "Go," I said. Her face hardened then, fury flashing through the tears. "You'll regret this. You think you're better than me? You're nothing without me." I shut the door before she could finish. The fallout came fast. Trevor eventually got out of the hospital, but he was worse for wear. He lost his job, his reputation, and eventually his freedom. One night, the police picked him up after another fight in a bar. This time, he had a weapon. He was charged and sentenced, leaving Marissa on her own. She spiraled hard. I heard she tried staying with her parents for a while, but even they couldn't handle her bitterness. Her mother, who had once defended her with that line about deserving to be happy, finally admitted she didn't know what to do with her anymore. By the end of the month, Marissa was working at a strip mall boutique, barely scraping by. People whispered when they saw her. The woman who once flaunted her superiority now avoided eye contact in public. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly, quietly. I moved into a different place, one without memories soaked into the walls. I worked overtime, not to give her nice things, but to give myself a fresh start. I bought new furniture, new clothes, even got a dog, something she had always said we couldn't afford. For the first time in years, the silence in my home felt like peace instead of punishment. But Marissa wasn't done haunting me. One afternoon, I was walking downtown when I spotted her through a cafe window. She was behind the counter, wearing a faded apron, her smile forced as she handed a coffee to a customer. Our eyes met across the glass. She froze. For a second, I saw something flicker. Hope, maybe desperation. She half-stepped toward the door, as if she might chase me down. But I didn't stop. I walked on, letting the crowd swallow me. For the first time, I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. The kind of distance you feel when you think back to a life that doesn't belong to you anymore. She had laughed when I caught her. She had told me it wasn't a big deal. She had tried to tear me down when I refused to crumble. And now, there she was, serving lattes in a cafe, watching me walk away without a word. That was the consequence. Not my revenge. Not some dramatic takedown. Just life, leveling her out in ways I never needed to orchestrate. And the silence between us was louder than anything she had ever said. Weeks later, I got one final reminder of her collapse. An envelope arrived in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a letter in her handwriting. "Daniel, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know what that meant until it was too late. You were always steady, always safe. I thought I wanted something else. I was wrong. Please remember me as I was before I ruined everything. If nothing else, I'm sorry." I read it once. Then I folded it, set it on the counter, and left it there for days. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wanted to remind myself what choices look like when they come home to roost. Eventually, I tossed it in the trash. And with it, the last piece of her I carried. Life didn't magically turn golden after that, but it became mine again. People stopped asking me about her. Friends stopped bringing up her name. Slowly, the whispers faded, and I became something other than the man whose fiancée had laughed in his face. Sometimes I still catch myself remembering the way she looked at me that night, bold and cruel, as if she'd won. But then I remember the cafe window, the apron, the hollow eyes watching me walk away. That was the ending she earned, and the closure I needed.